panel making a world of monsters. All right, that's what I like to hear. This is the longest running genre magazine in publication. How incredible is that? And all the fans are here to find out what is happening in the Famous Monsters of Filmland world. We are going to bring you, the Famous Monsters of Filmland has been bringing you all the cool creepiness of the silver screen since 1958. And we have some amazing stuff to share today, don't we, Matt?
We do.
Oh, man. So we've loved Famous Monsters since we were little horror fans, right?
Tiny little horror fans. I am Matt.
I'm Aaron.
We host the Launchpad podcast where we talk about all different types of pop culture. We do comic books, we do movies, we do toys, and of course we do...
Monsters! It's cool when we do that.
It worked!
It worked. Yeah, we practiced.
We've loved Famous Monsters of Filmland for a really long time, and we've been lucky enough to work with them for the last couple of years.
But before we dive in, you guys have to go visit them at booth 1314 for $1 raffles and free posters with purchase. You get to see some makeup demos from this awesome guy who we're going to get to talk to, and we'll tell you a little bit more about what they have at their booth later in the panel. But guys, you got to visit it. It's a great place. Now, Matt, you ready to make a world of monsters?
Speaking of a world of monsters, we have a professional monster maker right here. Let's give it up for Face-Off finalist and makeup artist Walter Welsh. Now, not only can you see this guy right here, right now, and he's created some of these terrifying, beautiful works. I've actually had the pleasure of working with you on a couple of different things. Walter will also be down at the Famous Monsters booth doing some live makeup demonstrations. Has anyone ever seen a live makeup demonstration? It's fantastic. It is behind the scenes. It is movie magic. And you get to watch this gentleman do it right here. He's going to be doing a couple different demonstrations down at booth 1314. Tomorrow, he's going to do Thanos at 10 o'clock, and he's going to do Hellboy at 12 o'clock. You're going to be friggin' busy, man.
Two full makeup.
Sunday, he's going to be doing Thanos again at 10. Now, Walter, for those of us who were here last year, you did a Thanos last year as well, right? But you told me that this year is going to be a different makeup. What's different about this year's than last year's Thanos?
Well, when I did last year's Thanos, I had only just seen Infinity War, and there weren't really too many pictures released, and it was really hard to just come up with the armor and the makeup and everything, so I kind of took my own artistic interpretation of the character. Whereas this year, I've already seen Infinity War, lots of pictures have been released, and lots of in-game pictures have been released, so I had really good reference pictures to do the armor, and I redid the armor, and I resculpted the face, and I just made him a lot better. He's got the big 6-foot-tall sword and the gauntlet and everything, so it's just like in the movies without the CGI and bring a little practical to it.
So as you mentioned, you're not just a makeup artist. You do costumes and props. Tell us a little bit about what is the armor made of? Are you hammering out metal? Are you going to forge? No. What do you got?
I do everything out of EVA foam. It's the typical cosplayer material that most of the cosplayers use. I made everything. I got a live cast, and a live cast is when you basically take a mold of a person's body, and then you can cast up the body form. And from there, I drew out shapes of the armors with paper and tape. You tape it around and I draw out all the stencils and everything. And from there, I trace it on foam and kind of put together and create the armor. And it fits that live cast perfectly. And then from there, I develop the makeup on another set of live casts with clay. You sculpt everything, all the forms, the shapes, the details, and you slowly start to piece together a makeup.
It's awesome.
And last year's looks great. He showed me some pictures of what this year's will be like. You guys got to check out booth 1314. He's going to be there tomorrow at 10. Doing Thanos, 12 is Hellboy, and then Sunday again at 10 is Thanos. Walter, what else do you have coming up? Where can we follow you?
You can follow me on social media. I'm on all platforms. I'm on Instagram at Waltimus Prime. I travel. I do a lot of these conventions, and I'll be at Son of Monsterpalooza in the fall. And other than that, I'm always with Phil and the Famous Monsters guys. I love everything that they do, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Well, we love seeing those makeups and all your progress and all the awesome stuff that you do. We love seeing our favorite famous monsters come to life. And how about something exciting, guys? We got something exciting to share. We all know Famous Monsters of Filmland has been going for 61 years. Let's give it up for that. 61 years in publication. That's incredible. But we've gone and done it, folks.
We voyaged deep into the Famous Monsters vault. Ropes and tackle.
Dug around a bit.
There's lots of dust.
And emerged intact, bearing the best of 6 decades of monster articles from around the world. Introducing.
I thought we were doing the monster voice.
Oh, I forgot. I thought. Okay. Well, we were a little off on that one. All right. Famous Monsters Archives. You should clap for that. Awesome. All right.
This is going to be all the amazing and influential articles that the Famous Monsters of Filmland magazines have had over the years.
So, to tell us about the collecting of the archives and what we can expect, I'm throwing to Editor-in-Chief Holly Interlandi. Clap. All right.
What's stomping our way, Hal?
So the archives are a new series of magazines that we decided to put together because a lot of the older classic stuff is out of print from the 60s and 70s that everybody loves to go back and read. And also we wanted to, basically support basically show our support that we've been supporting these particular themes, particular monsters for as long as we've been in publication. So our brand new one is the Hammer Archives.
Ooh.
As the 2 covers here.
For those of you who aren't familiar, you really need to get familiar. Hammer was the Technicolor, blood red, sexy answer to the Universal Monsters.
Yes.
It found its way to America through midnight movies and sunk its fan into horror fans. Tell us more.
Yeah, well, Hammer actually and Famous Monsters actually have a lot in common. Hammer is actually turning 85 this year. They've been around since 1934, but they really got going in the 50s with their sci-fi and horror films. The ones that they made, like Curse of Frankenstein, they made some Quatermass movies, they made The Mummy, and of course everybody knows that they made superstars out of Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. So we've gone back to the old archives of Famous Monsters, and we've reprinted classic articles, but they're not just reprints. We've gone and added fun facts and editorial commentary and all sorts of fun stuff. And we've also, as I said, Famous Monsters and Hammer have a lot in common in that we both have been rebooted in the new century. Famous Monsters was purchased in 2007 with the intent of making new films. And I'm not sure how many of you know that Hammer is actually behind a lot of recent horror films, like The Woman in Black, starring Daniel Radcliffe. And we've got that coverage as well. And then we always have a new interview at the end of an archives volume. So in the Hammer one, there's a new interview with the CEO of Hammer, Simon Oakes.
That's awesome. Very, very cool. And what is the other archives that's coming out?
Well, the first volume, which is almost sold out because people love it. The first volume we put together mostly because King of the Monsters was coming out this year, and we all were very excited about it. We put together an archives for Godzilla.
Boom.
And you guys know that this is Godzilla's first time at Comic-Con, right? Toho has a booth downstairs with a lot of old props, a suit. It's really, really great stuff. So if you love Godzilla, not only get this magazine, Howard, where can we get this magazine?
Well, we still have some copies of the cover on the right here is the exclusive art cover we did. It's official Warner Brothers King of the Monsters cover art. We still have some of those. The one on the left is actually completely sold out now. That's a San Julian interpretation of Godzilla and Rodan.
Want to tell us a little bit about what's in Volume 1 of the archives?
Well, Volume 1 is, we've been around pretty much since Godzilla was around. He debuted in '54 in Japan, and we debuted in '58. And so the first article in our Godzilla archives is, of course, the film book that came out of the American interpretation of Godzilla, King of the Monsters. A film book was what they used to print in a magazine because nobody could just pop in a DVD and watch a movie whenever they wanted to. They had to look at black and white stills and read the plot summary of the film and pretend they were watching it, pretty much. So that's the first article that's in the Godzilla archives, and it continues with articles about all the classic movies, and then it has
something I want to bring up is
these
Aurora Models here. I know it's not on topic, but I have to bring this up. I had a bunch of these as a kid. Raise a hand. Who had Aurora Models? Oh, man. Now, the creature from the Black Lagoon drove me nuts because his head didn't quite fit together properly, and the back half of the head was like centimeters taller than the front half, and you had to file it down to make it fit. It was super, drove me
Was that
nuts.
just him, or did your guys?
Yeah, did anybody else have that problem? Or yes.
Okay.
None of it fit together. Yeah, I mean, for as awesome as these were, they were kind of bunk. So
Well, what's funny about the Godzilla one is it looks nothing like Godzilla.
nothing like Godzilla.
And we've also got some more recent interviews, interviews with the original Godzilla, Haruo Nakajima. And of course, we close out this archives issue with a brand new interview with Michael Dougherty, who directed King of the Monsters. Did we
guys
all
see King of Monsters?
love King of the Monsters?
I mean, I've been waiting to see Mothra, Rodan, King Ghidorah back on the big screen forever, and to see them back in like this spectacular fashion.
Who's
was
a
incredible.
Mothra fan?
Ah, that's my favorite.
Did not expect that. All right. That was the coolest Mothra's looked, for sure. And that was the most badass I've ever seen Rodan. We can
man.
agree on that, right?
When Rodan comes in and does a thunder roll, starts taking out planes, I was like, losing my mind. So, speaking of Godzilla, how about some more Godzilla exciting news, guys? Let's keep it rolling. What? I didn't plan that. That slide read my mind. I'm in Twilight Zone right now.
Self-aware.
Famous Monsters is now the official U.S. distributor of X Plus figurines, and one of the biggest things to look at down at booth 1314 is the X Plus Godzilla from King of Monsters. This thing is gorgeous, this thing is huge, and this is the first time you can see it painted here at the con. Pretty awesome. Yeah. Is there a way we can dim the lights slightly to see a better picture of this gorgeous, gorgeous monster? I don't know if our
While they're working on that, after this panel, go to booth 1314. The model is, I mean, it's not as muscular as I am, but it's about as big as I am. It's gigantic. Their table is leaning down there. There you go.
There it is. Now, to talk a little bit about this X Plus figure, George, could you fill us in a little bit?
We got Jorge Marrero from
Famous Monsters.
Yeah, we're, whoa, too much. We're very excited about this because we've been working closely with a good friend of ours at Summit Kaiju, and he got us in touch with X Plus, and they've been looking for a while to really get someone in America who can get their figures to the customers here, and not at a price that's just going to make you bankrupt. And so we're very happy to get this on our store. And it won't be just figures like the Gigantic series, but it's also going to be their 30-centimeter figures and also their Deforio figures, which are very chibi and exaggerated, as you can see by this Kong figure right here. And these other figures that you're seeing right now, these are also at our booth, and you can see them. This one lights up.
Yeah, I'll just troll through these for a couple times. Look at that. Kong Skull Island. Who's excited to see Godzilla fight King Kong again? I mean, and at the end of King of Monsters, when they found the King Ghidorah's head, is anybody hoping for a Mecha Ghidorah after this? Fingers crossed, guys. Fingers crossed.
Who wants a Mecha Kevin, though?
These are incredible. Super cool. You can come down and see this at booth 1314, other X Plus prototypes, and just keep your eyes open to where will they be able to find more information about this? On the website?
So right now, if you go to our booth today and within the next few days, you can actually sign up for more information for the pre-orders. This figure drops in November, and we'll have more information on our website on CaptainCo.com and through our emails.
Yeah, CaptainCo.com. You can also buy Famous Monsters t-shirts, other licensed products from American Gothic Press, and keep a lookout for the Godzilla stuff.
There's a couple statues down there that are not on this slideshow, like the Deforio King Ghidorah. It looks awesome. There's a different King Ghidorah statue down there as well, right? It's amazing. You guys, the photos look great now that we've done the lights, but they're not doing it justice. Go check it out. The thing's big enough to take a picture with. You guys got to check it out.
Let's see, where are we at? We got sidetracked by Godzilla because he's that awesome. So yeah, the archives, which we're collecting all these awesome articles and putting them into a great magazine for you. The archives will definitely have some amazing articles from past issues, but we should take a look to the future with Famous Monsters 291.
Let's give it up for these beautiful covers all the time. wallpaper my room in those covers if my wife let me do anything. We got Famous Monsters 291. We've got demons. We've got so much great stuff. Holly, would you like to kick off a little bit about 291?
Sure. So 291 is our third annual magazine. We're now in an annual format. And since now we are publishing the archives twice a year, we've decided to dedicate the annual entirely to new content. So no reprints in the annual. It's just going to be new stuff. New articles about classic stuff, new articles about recent stuff, just all sorts of new content for you. And the first cover, as you can see here, is San Julian's rendition of Curse of the Demon, otherwise known as Night of the Demon. So good. Anybody here seen that movie? It's pretty awesome, right? Pretty awesome. So we're doing basically a demon special. You know, we've got It Chapter 2 coming out this year, you know, and we've got this 10th anniversary of Drag Me to Hell, all sorts of good demon stuff in this annual. It's also the 40th anniversary of Alien.
This would be the perfect cue for somebody to have a chest burster burst out. Anybody? Anybody? Come on, the food's not that bad. All right.
Nice.
Nice.
And you want to jump to the next cover?
Yeah,
Or you just
sure.
wanna-
I mean, everybody can see these. This is just a list of some of the stuff we have planned for this year's annual. And this is the other cover. This is the
Phantom
19
fans, nice.
1945 Phantom of the Opera, as rendered by, of course, San Julian. That's the Claude Rains version of the Phantom. The talkie, as one says.
Now, I know that the image is striking here, but I'm psyched to see the 90s obsession with animal disasters. I purposely did not ask them for more details because I want to read about it.
You had to be there. It was a disaster.
Well, Famous Monsters doesn't just make great magazines. I don't know if you guys know, but they also have a comic imprint label called American Gothic Press. And they're cranking out great comics as well. We had a great panel last year about some of the stuff that they did that was coming out then. Now we have even more cool stuff. The first thing that we have is Monster World, The Golden Age, which is the second book in a series.
Oh, yeah.
Monster World is a story about Detective Hank Barrymore, and he makes his way through a noir filled with monsters. Publisher, creator, Phil Kim. You want to tell us a little bit about Monster World in general, maybe don't spoil, but how the last book kind of ended and where this book starts.
So Monster World is like all good stories. It's ultimately a love story. So Hank Barrymore, kind of lost in his own life, finds himself again and purpose through a woman he falls in love with, Shirley, who was, is in the last episode, and so, or last volume, and so she is lost, and so he's not much into the occult, but he needs to find her, so he starts taking on all of these mysteries into the occult, and he actually ends up becoming, quite a sorcerer himself. He ends up developing into that anyway. But how Monster World works is he kind of travels through time. So for instance, the next arc is going to take place slightly after 31 when the first story ends. It's about 33, and he goes and he finds out that there's some clues about where Shirley might be in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl. So you think that the Dust Bowl was done by irresponsible farming, but lo and behold, that wasn't what happened. What happened was elementals were being summoned by a guy who wanted to do a land grab. So he goes to figure this stuff out and finds another pop culture icon and the inception of that. So do you want to actually... she helped me write this one, so do you want to jump in?
Yeah, it's actually I had a lot of fun writing this with Phil. It's so much fun because it's a reference and sort of a parody of another known story, but we add sort of a demonic occult twist to it. When he goes to Oklahoma, this is in the very first issue. He summons the demon of knowledge, Nibis, and Nibis basically gives him the hints that he needs to get to Oklahoma, where he finds Cole, who might resemble a certain pop culture icon that we're all familiar with. And he finds Cole's parents, who basically have not told him that he is from the past, a super being from the past, from the line of pre-flood man. And of course, the elemental sorcerer, who has basically created the Dust Bowl by, using his air and dust elementals and making everything go crazy. And also, the cool surprise is that the portal that Cole went through, he was actually followed by a bunch of demons, 3 high hell demons that we had so much fun with at Belphegor and Nepsigos and Behemoth.
This is the mark of a good property. You guys are all nerds. You're at Comic-Con. You're here embracing what you love. When you see creators talking about their stuff with that smile, how jazzed do you get? Like, who wants to read this book? Like, how happy they are.
Yeah.
They are not the only creators, though. We also have art director and writer Jorge Marrero. You know that guy? George, pick up where Holly left us. Tell us a little bit more.
Well, I gotta say, it's been quite a ride with Piotr and our wonderful colorist, Dennis Calero over here. The demons that we deal with and the heroes that come out of Phil's and Holly's mind are wonderful, and that takes up most of the space. Like, I don't have to direct much, to be honest, you know? It's like...
But you designed the sigils.
I did design the sigils, yes.
He designed the sigils on these demons
You
here.
forget what you do sometimes, you know, in the darkness.
So when you guys, all 3 of you, anybody can hop in here. When you write a demon, a high-ranking demon of hell appears, do you then work with how it's designed? Like, where do these incredible designs come from? I mean, this 2-headed one, this giant horns, these are incredible.
I'll take that on. So I wrote a couple of independent films, and one of them was produced. It's an amazing thing to have something in your head, and then you give it off to either an actor or a director or a colorist or an artist, and they literally bring it to life. And it's an amazing thing because it's something that they interpret, that they see, that maybe you didn't even see. So it's such a collaborative process. I love it. Yeah. And it feels almost disingenuous when I see people a single person taking credit for an amazing creation, because it just takes such a massive team. And even for something as, how would I say it, as less complicated as a comic book, the more you allow the colorist, the artist, to interpret that script, it just becomes better. So a lot of what you see in there didn't actually come out of our heads. Mm-hmm. We created the world, we created the characters, we created obviously the verbiage, and wonderful things came, or horrible things came from it. So.
To add to it, it's a lot of bouncing back and forth, for sure. Like, Piotr would come up with the design, and it would be this amazing thing, and it's like, oh, how about we add some horns to it? And he's like, oh yeah, how about we add some tentacles? And like, and how about we add some weapons to this? And it's like, it's just back and forth. Like, a lot of times he'll draw something, I'll draw something back, and he'll draw something back at me. Yeah. And it's just this conversation of just pictures. It's like we're hieroglyphing to each other through
and that's
email.
Piotr Kowalski?
Kowalski,
incredible artist. We'll talk a little bit more about him later. But speaking of some of, just looking here, this book, with just so much detail in all the art, so much beautiful creation. The story's really interesting. Where else does the story go when they get to the Dust Bowl? What happens? Where can we see the characters go?
You gotta wait for the series, man.
Oh man, I was hoping for spoilers now.
Lots of demon fights.
Lots of demon fights. That's what I'm
looking for. All about demons this panel.
What I will tell you is that Hank Barrymore stumbles onto something that suspends his aging, or slowly reduces his aging incredibly, or slows down his aging. So really the series goes through time. It goes from the 30s all the way up until now. So it's very interesting, and it's very interesting to create a character like somebody who was born way back in turn of the last century, or turn of the last century, and how they kind of react and see the world as it's changing.
That's wild.
I'm starting to feel like that, but anyway.
Looking at these frames right here, we have, it looks like our juiced up farm boy, our super powered farm boy with some power breath. Does he have other powers as well, or is that something that comes along that we'll find out more about?
He does, but I just want to go back to, and I don't know if I'm skipping your...
No.
But I never understood how important colorists were.
Oh, we were just about to get to that. That was our next piece.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, so these pencils and inks come in, and they're incredible. But they may end up being, like something's missing with the depth. And we go ahead and call Dennis and say, hey, can you correct this? I mean, literally it's not there, and he'll go into the shadows and he'll create the effect. It's so incredible and rich, and we feel so fortunate to have Dennis with us. But I've learned a lot from watching Dennis work.
So let's introduce him. Go ahead,
Well, we
Matt.
got a lot of times, comics are a collaboration, and a lot of times I feel like the credit for the art is given to the penciler and/or the inker. But a lot of books, this one in particular, are made almost through the color. American Gothic Press was lucky to get Dennis Calero to color Monster World. And you can see in the next couple slides that we do, we're going to have the inks and then the colors next to it. And just what Phil is saying, if you look at the smoke in the bottom panel, there's so much dimension that is not in the inks. And there's nothing wrong with the inks, they're great. But the colorist does this great unsung hero job. So let me sing to you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Good song, Matt.
That was off the cuff, okay? Dennis, can you tell us how do you approach
Sure.
the colors for Monster World Golden Age?
I think that I'll try to be succinct because it's a little bit inside baseball. I think Piotr's work is complete in the context of being black and white work, if that makes sense. I think when I look at the black and white work, I go, there's depth, it's implied, and I see everything there. Ironically, if I were to go back in and color it flat, that would actually destroy the depth that Piotr's created in line. So my job as a colorist is to enhance and take the lead, take the cues from Piotr's work, both in what's explicit and then what's implied in the line work, and get snazzy off of that, and make the color feel like an integral component rather than just something that's an enhancement of what's already there. And the story being so interesting, and Piotr is setting the stage for me to go in and do all these effects and push the darks and bring up the lights. And he's been really great about letting me play with the sandbox he's set up, which is always wonderful because for those of you who don't know, which probably a lot of you, I do pencils and inks and art for other people. And it's always a pleasure to this day to color other people and to bring my knowledge of what I do for my work, because my work is very, I try to draw so that the color and the line art works hand in hand, rather than sort of just bumping into each other. And so the chance to do that for someone else, because I've had artists, line artists that say like, I'll try to say turn a cloud line into a color, let's say like a dark gray color with a white cloud, to let that recede into the distance. And they'll go, no, that's my line, leave it black. Because they're so sensitive and they want everyone to see every line they've drawn. But when it's finished color work, it's the effect of the entire presentation at once, if that makes sense. And it's a real pleasure working with these guys on this story and with this artist in particular. I think it gives me a lot of chance to show off, and I think it all works together.
It's really amazing stuff.
So there.
Something that you can just see in these pages and in just the ones that are colored here, you kind of get to bring all these different themes and colors to the moments. So when you look at something like this down here, when there's this big superpower face-off, you have a cool blue on one side and a brighter color on the other. Do you get to develop that language that certain characters bring certain colors with them? Is that something that's fun to do?
I get to have the first word.
Yeah.
And then other words come in. No, it's a collaboration. I think. God damn it. So, I think the advantage of working with these guys is that I say that somewhat facetiously, but it is true, because some people will come in and say, these are the colors we want, this is how we want you to handle it, this is what we want you to do, and that's, you're not getting to have any input, and for the art director or the editor, at that point, you're not letting the person that you're hiring do what you hired them to do. So there's really been very relatively little, we have conversations about, clarity is a very important, thing to worry about, almost the most important thing, I think. A clarity, mood, afterwards. And for example, in that, can you go back to that last slide real quick?
You bet.
So I forgot what color I chose. I think it was blue on one side and then red on the other or something like that.
Nice power orange. Yeah.
And then someone said, no, let's just make it gold, or maybe it was the opposite. It was something like that. I'm sure I was right and everyone else was wrong. No, we ended up in the right place. And it's very easy because it's just like, yeah, okay, let's try that out. Why fight about it? We're collaborating. Let's just do it.
Very cool. Very cool.
So before we move away from Monster World, Phil, where can we get Monster World?
Well, you can get it at your favorite comic book shop. You can order it. You can order it online through captainco.com, or you can get it at the booth. So.
In which, if you get our trade, you get the first issue free.
Booth 1314. Buy the first trade of Monster World and get the first issue of Golden Age.
That deal is scary.
He's got it. He's got it. He figured it out.
Oh, I think, yeah. Oh.
We practiced.
Just lost our job for next year.
So American Gothic Press releases all manners of genre comics, and we have a great comic writer here on the panel. He's done stories for Godzilla, he's killed the Marvel Universe with Deadpool, and he has a story in the upcoming title, Famous Monsters Presents Tales from Acker Mansion. Colin Bunn. So we're going to get to what you do with Famous Monsters, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity to ask you about when you work on a title like Godzilla, how do you write that? It's like first panel, smash, second panel, smash. Like how do you put that together?
Well, I mean, it's there's a little more to it than smash. It's Godzilla in particular was a bucket list for me. It was that's a character that I felt like I needed to write. And I really wanted to do something different with the character. And that miniseries is Godzilla Cataclysm, which I think is still around. You can still get it in trade. But I wanted to put my spin on what I thought could be a classic Godzilla story. So in that one in particular, I said, well, what if we've seen Destroy All Monsters, where all the monsters just ravage the world. I wanted to see what happened after the fact, what the world looked like after, And even when I was a kid watching Godzilla movies, I used to say, oh, another talking person scene. I hate those. But when I wrote the comic, I was like, oh, now I know why we need those characters. And I really wanted those characters, the human characters, to be just as interesting as the monsters.
So what is it like working with like a legendary company like Famous Monsters of Filmland and American Gothic Press? What are you doing with them? And like, just how cool is that for a fan of monsters?
Oh yeah, it's. You can see that picture, with me holding those two Famous Monsters magazines. There's not. I don't want to. Famous Monsters was a very important magazine to me. It was a magazine that I read as a kid. I can tell you when I read the story, the photo book on Friday the 13th Part 2 in Famous Monsters. I can tell you exactly where I was sitting, where we were, what my family was doing. That magazine has so much history, personal history for me, and is just so important to me. Just being in the same room with these folks now is an honor.
How did the magazine and your fandom of it kind of work you towards the career that you're in?
Well, it's the magazine was always about these stories and the stories around not just the stories of the movies, the summaries of the movies, but the stories about how these movies were made, how these creators were involved in it, the people telling the stories, the people bringing these monsters to life, and that was something that from a very young age I wanted to be a part of in some way. I was not talented enough to be an artist. I was not talented enough to be a special effects makeup artist, which is what I originally thought I was going to do with my life.
Don't do it.
I won't.
I agree.
So I said, what can I do What can I do with monsters that requires no talent? Oh, I'll write stories.
He finally admitted it. It's on record.
The secret's out. Oh. So one of the things that you are working on with them is the Tales from Acker Mansion. Can you tell us a little bit about this project and what you're doing for it?
We actually, this is actually a project that we released a couple years ago. Actually, this was the very first collaboration between Cullen and American Gothic Press.
Yeah.
And we actually seeked him. I actually sought him out because I was like, this guy. I've been a huge fan of Cullen's creator-owned work. I don't know if any of you guys have read his series, Six Gun, Bone Parish. They're all incredible. He does basically a series for every major publisher in comics right now, and they're all amazing. So I was like, okay, we have to get this guy. And he sent me a pitch about a post-apocalyptic world overrun with giant kaiju in which a family has outfitted a monster truck to be a kaiju-killing machine, and there's a giant catfish.
Yeah,
All those words are amazing when put together.
So, yeah, I was
Can
like...
you tell us a little bit about this story, Colin?
so it's called All Out Monster Throwdown.
Okay, go on.
And I wanted to tell a story about a group of good old boys and girls who created, who were they used to be popular on the monster truck circuit. I think I was actually at a monster truck rally when I thought of this. And they were popular on the monster truck circuit, and then the monster apocalypse occurs. So what do? You outfit your truck with the best gear you can, and you go out and hunt monsters down. So the story is about this giant catfish who comes trundling out of the woods, and these guys in the monster truck go out and they have harpoons, harpoons on the truck, and they try to take down this creature.
He's laughing and smiling when he says that. Do you not want to read that story?
I have a huge world. This is just the intro. There's a huge monster truck throwdown world, or all-out monster throwdown world out there. So,
And Holly, did you say that it was a family that was doing this?
I think, well, in his original story, was it not a family?
no, it's a family.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is
when I was a kid, monsters were very important to me, but so were the Dukes of Hazzard. So, it's sort of the Dukes of Hazzard driving a monster truck fighting a giant catfish.
Yeah.
Did you have the type of family who, in a giant kaiju-infested world, would outfit their monster truck with killing weapons? Like, is that a personal thing?
I
for you?
absolutely have family members who would try that.
Cullen and I sort of share the Southern heritage thing.
Yeah, no,
I'm also from the South.
Yeah, I have family members who probably have tried that, even though there aren't giant monsters right now.
Best to be prepared, I guess.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Colin?
Sir.
Do they fry the catfish after?
Do they?
Do they fry it?
Oh yeah. Are you-
Oh, brilliant. I would
what
eat
else,
that.
What else do you do?
Kaiju-sized fish fry.
Eat a lot of rice.
You're spoiling my story.
Oh,
too.
sorry.
So are there any other projects in the works, or where else can people find what you're working on now?
Yes and yes.
Oh, well, let us know. Lay it on us, man.
Well, I'm working on a number of creator-owned projects all the time. And most of them are horror themed. That's what I like. That's where I live, and that's where my heart is. So there's lots of monsters and other ghouls and creepy crawlies. And yeah, it would be a wonderful world, wouldn't it, where a guy who loves monsters as much as I do a book with a publisher like these fine people up here. I don't know how much I'm supposed to say.
News coming soon.
Yeah,
but
all right.
yes.
Okay.
Cullen is going to be working with American Gothic Press, yes.
Yes.
That's phenomenal. In the meantime, where can people keep up with you? Well, give them a hand. They'll give them a hand. They deserve it.
Yeah, real easy to find on social media. It's just my name, Cullen Bunn, across all the platforms. So, follow me and you'll get all the latest news.
All right. So the next piece we're going to talk about, we are looking back at a brief part with the, Monster World. The artist, Piotr Kowalski, he is doing a Kickstarter for a awesome art book called Peter Kowalski's Book of Monsters, and a brand new art book from the artist of Monster World. You want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, Piotr, he's been with us for, the whole Monster World series, and he's just incredible. But one of the great things about him is his inking work, like just the black and white stuff that he comes up with, and the black and white that he sends us. We get the image and we're just like, oh my God, this is incredible. And he's also got a bunch of unpublished monster portraits and monster art that he wanted to put into an art book. And he wanted to do it with American Gothic Press. And he's done so much incredible monster art with us. Like a lot, like some of this, like on the far right, that's actually a cover. That's a cover of Monster World: The Golden Age. That's just incredible.
I thought that was Walter. Sorry.
It does look like Walter, doesn't it?
Which I like to
when
add.
they
It's
cast for
like,
the movie, man, ask for
this
the
right
part.
here, that cover right there is a good example of what Piotr does to enhance the stuff that we give him.
Yeah.
The sample I gave him was practically a stick figure compared to what he gave us.
You're
And
like, I
it's-
want this guy and demons
Yeah.
and big light.
And there's often this conversation of like, maybe we're giving him too much to do. And then he comes back with that much line work. And we're like, oh, okay, he can handle more.
That's incredible. Well, we should keep a lookout for that on Kickstarter and get your Piotr Kowalski's Book of Monsters art book. Where else can they find more info? Is that going to be linked on?
It's going to be the fall. We're going to start the Kickstarter, and it's going to be an art book Kickstarter. So it should be a lot of fun. Lots of prints and stuff for rewards.
All right, well, we got time for a couple of questions. If you have a question, slowly make your way to the microphone. Tell us your question. If it's a real good question, you can get a Famous Monsters tote
With the sigils.
Designed by
from Monster World.
So who has a question? Raise your hand. This guy right here.
Question, not a statement.
What's your most influential monster? Anybody. I want all of your opinions.
So what?
Oh, personally?
Yeah, personally.
influential.
My mother. I'm just kidding.
Boom.
Wow!
Just we're Latin.
Wow!
Oh!
We feel the chancleta, that's what we
Please don't tell her I said that. Please.
Fresh off the press.
Damn it.
Who else? I mean, you said, what about Jason Voorhees? You said that second movie was pretty dang influential.
Yeah, but he's not my favorite. That's not my most. I mean, it's got to be Godzilla for me. I was watching, Godzilla versus Megalon when Belushi was dressed up as. I was watching that live on television, and Godzilla was such an important character for me as a kid.
That's incredible. All right, who else has a question? This guy right behind me. Here you go.
I'd like to circle back to those Ravel models. I think I made every one. I'm not sure if
Aurora
I
models,
made
yeah.
them. Aurora. Okay, Ravel was the cars,
Yeah.
and Aurora were the monsters. Anyway, I made every one, but I'm not sure if I made them because I enjoyed the monsters or because I was hooked on the glue at the time. I always had this urge to keep making.
Excellent question.
What I recall about the monsters, not the cars, was I would make one, I would put it at my bedstand, and I couldn't look at it. Okay, I wouldn't look at
Oh, snap.
it because they were too scary, scarier than the movies I would watch on Channel 11 at the time. And I'm just curious, among the people in the panel, have you ever created a monster that scared you?
Oh yeah.
That's a good question.
Wow.
Witches scare the heck out of me. Like the old, Clash of the Titan witches. I'm like, these
Yeah.
people need medical help, But they're like, we're making fun of them. I don't think it's right. But back then, there wasn't this kind of, So anyway, witches scare the bejesus out of me.
Yeah, witches are terrifying, right?
Yeah.
As far as characters I've created, I did a book called Death Follows, and it's about this itinerant worker who shows up on this farm, and his name is Cole, and it's the darkest book I've ever written, and he's the monster that scares me the most because he's just really awful, and he's a guy that could exist in this, who could easily exist in the world.
We have time for two more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Start right here.
Having various artists working on your comic books or graphic novels, what application are you using? Photoshop or?
I mostly, for line art or color, I use Photoshop now. If it's a painting, what I tend to do now is do sort of anything that I would do on an airbrush, with an airbrush or mechanical sort of line, I would use Photoshop, print it out on good like watercolor paper, and affix it to Masonite, and then finish it in oils on there. That's very specific, if anyone's taking notes.
While we're walking the mic, what's your greatest challenge between artists when you're working between documents?
I'm not sure I understand the question, I'm sorry.
When you're working between, as you're handing projects off between artists, between the original documents and
What's the most difficult part of the logistics of it?
Collaborations.
Oh, I'm a freelancer, so I'm often working on multiple projects, and so I need to have charts and physical. I got to make sure where I've so often so close to sending Holly a page from my humanoids book, and I'm like, that's not where that's supposed to go, which is always awkward. And generally speaking. Physically, I'm not usually able to work on more than 2 or 3 projects at once, so it's usually fine. But yeah, and besides, everyone has like online like Dropbox or what system do you guys use? Google Docs?
Google Drive.
Google Drive, and then usually they use different ones. So I know like, oh, Google Drive is for them, and Dropbox is for humanoids, and so you find a way to keep it straight.
So, which decade defined monsters for you? Do any of you have a favorite decade for monsters, monster films? Because times always change with each decade, and I just want to know who did it. What did it for you? Which one?
Oh, the 80s, for sure, 100%.
Universal Monsters for me, watching when I was a little kid on channel, I'll just say channel 11 because the guy said it before.
I have a certain love for.
I think we have time for one more question over here. This lady's been, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I have a certain love for.
That's the
70s
Mothra
animated
girl.
movies.
Yeah, sure.
She has a question.
It's for all of you, but especially Cullen. When you're creating monsters, is there a factor or something about a monster you haven't seen done yet that you'd like to create? And is there a factor that you think shouldn't be tackled because it might be too controversial?
I'm sure there are factors that are too controversial and shouldn't be tackled, but I also feel like that's sort of cowardice when it comes to writing, and if it's something I think is right for the story, whether, even if it's something that really bothers me and it's the right thing for the story, then okay, I'll tackle it and try to do it as, as tactfully and respectfully and in an interesting way that works for those characters. I always try to find something interesting with these monsters, and I think the thing that they all have to have is I want people to relate in some way. Even if you hate them, you're terrified of them, I feel like when you can relate to the monster in some way, it makes it much more frightening.
Yeah, and I think as far as monsters are concerned, I think the most interesting bad guys or monsters or whatever you're writing, they have to have a motivation, like all of us. If we can't relate to their motivation, even if it's a bad motivation, then it's not that interesting. They just become two-dimensional, so yeah.
So to wrap things up, guys, thank you so much for coming. Be sure to visit the famous Monsters of Filmland booth 1314. They have $1 raffles every day. What are they going to be giving away? Holly, can you let us know what they're giving away at the raffles?
George?
We actually will have a few smaller scale X Plus figures that you can get that are Godzilla figures, and also one of the 4 Kongs that you can see on display next to Godzilla.
Super awesome. They're giving away posters with a purchase. Check out all the Monster World stuff. Check out the archive stuff. It's going to be amazing. Follow them on social media, famousmonsters.com, @famousmonsters, AmericanGothicPress.com. Just keep up with all the amazing Famous Monsters stuff that we are doing.
And make sure you check out Walter's demos. We got tomorrow as a Thanos at 10, we got Hellboy at 12, and we got another Thanos on Sunday at 10.
By the way, thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Yeah, a hand for you.